Hey everyone, this is Enaa, and it's been a long time since you've seen me do one of these type of videos. In fact, it's been over a year, because a year ago, on September 30th, 2011, Occupy Boston, as part of the nation worldwide Occupy movement, encamped at Dewey Square as a protest against economic inequality and social injustice, among other things. And in one fashion or another, I've been a part of that. And I wanted to share with you just some thoughts I've had on this 1 year anniversary of Occupy Boston, because this particular date, September 30th, is much more significant to me personally than the Occupy Wall Street anniversary of September 17th, because this was the day I became involved. And anniversaries for revolutionaries, for activists, are a fashion not just to remember the past, but to also think about the future and to show our collective strength. And I wanted to remember and maybe reflect a bit on this. And to start with, I want to start with the whole question of illusions, the whole question. Because if we think about it, Occupy Boston, I can't speak for the other occupies around the country or around Massachusetts or the world, but in Occupy Boston, we had people come with all sorts of illusions. And there were people there who seemed to think everything would be okay if we got rid of Citizens United, or if we end the Fed, or if everyone start eating vegan, or something like that, or becoming a Buddhist. And, some of these are not as bad as others, but they are certain illusions, not what I stand politically by any means. But they're not the only illusions people come with. There's also the question of what revolutionary political activists came in, because in many respects there's a sign of arrogance that all these illusions that people come in. And I grant you, the ending the Fed stuff, like the whole Ron Paul, it's rubbish. And the same with the Citizens United. Money was in politics long before Citizens United, believe me. And there's certainly appealing to the Democrats or any one of them is not going to help. But those are certainly illusions. I grant that. I grant that wholly. But what about the illusions that we all came with coming into it as revolutionaries, political activists? If, handing down what we think you should do by fiat without even listening to what ordinary people who are gathering at Dewey Square or anywhere else we're going to say, here's our list of demands, here's what we think you should do. No, here's what you should do. And maybe those demands may not have been objectionable, but there's no listening, there's no willingness to learn, there's no willingness to embrace the new, the rupture, because that's what a lot of this was. Not only were in Dewey Square, people were coming in with all these illusions. I grant you, wholly, they may have been petty bourgeois, they may have all been students or whatever, not really, but you get my point. What do you expect? A pure social movement where everyone can quote Das Kapital from the get-go? That's idiotic. What we saw is people coming together in Occupy Boston and other Occupies, who did have these illusions, who did have these thoughts, and they were expressing their discontent with the economy, with society, with the whole political system, and they were often expressing it, through this, the language, the ideological forms, and the predominant discourse of the system. Whether it's Citizens United about corruption or the Federal Reserve or something. But the thing is, and this is something we often forget, is that they were expressing discontent. They were expressing a radicalism, an opening to the new. And as revolutionaries, I think that we should have done, or we still should do, a much better job of learning from that. Certainly we have things to teach. We have things to say. And, if, you can open someone up to Karl Marx or Lenin, that's awesome. But, it's not just a one-way. It's not just us explaining. It's also listening to those who are becoming newly radicalized. Because that's what was one of the great things about Dewey Square, is the fact that it wasn't just, a hardcore of radical socialist, anarchist, communist activists. It was brand new people coming in and expressing hope and feelings of a better world that they could build. And that was the great hope for me of Dewey Square. And it convinced me on so many levels that not only were people receptive, in however confused and however illusionary manner of it may express, but were receptive to the idea that we could potentially move past capitalism, that we can build something new, that where the needs of all are provided before the profits of a few. That's what I've been fighting for as a communist activist at Occupy Boston. I have no regrets about that. And it showed not just that people can express and have a reception to this, but it convinced me that we could actually win. Because before this, before Occupy Boston, I wasn't particularly involved as a political activist. I was a historian. I had written and published a few things, but I was mostly, in the world of academia. And the last year has been, well, it's been one hell of a rush, Suddenly all sorts of assumptions I had were turned on their head. Suddenly I'm learning more about everything, about how to be an activist, how to run meetings, how to use video camera equipment that I'd never used before, never thought I would use. And suddenly I have to learn how to do it on the fly, to organize events, and to push myself harder and faster, and to keep up with every new event that seemed to be changing by the second, by the minute. And it was amazing. I got to meet so many new people, not just the many activists I've met, the many ordinary people, a lot of whom are close comrades and friends. And I've met all sorts of authors who you've seen, and speakers who you've seen on part of on my YouTube channel, whether it's Richard Seymour, Noel Ignatieff, Carl Finnemore, you can go down the list. Amazing people. A lot of whom, were just, names in a book or on a computer screen. I never thought I'd actually get to meet them and talk to them, but it's been amazing. And in certain levels, it's also like becoming a revolutionary is almost like a Christian would say, it's like being touched by grace. Suddenly, like what was impossible became possible, and it changed. It changes us. For me, the person I was before, the inactive, the uncommitted, I guess, in the activist world, the person Doug, essentially passed. I'm not Doug anymore, even though that's my name. I took on my YouTube moniker, who was originally a novel character's name, of Enaa. I want the name, as I call it now, of a engaged political activist, an engaged communist who is willing to go the distance and hopefully see things through. Now, in terms of personal, it's been trying, there's been a lot of material sacrifices. There's been a lot of, I've said boneheaded things I take back. There'd be certain things I wish I didn't attend. A lot of pointless meetings, sure, but in terms of the overall course, I think I've been open to learning from everything that's happened this past year. I think I've grown. And there's stuff there'd be, again, this or that thing I take back, sure. But the overall course, what I've done and seen, my political trajectory, I really don't have regrets about that. Even though, I may have been the only person at Occupy Boston who seriously considered, using the whole thing as a form of dual power, to build a Soviet system or workers' council. And maybe that was an illusion. Maybe that makes me some kind of ultra-left, and maybe it was all wrong. I'll grant you that. But I don't regret erring in that side. I don't regret pushing myself to say, this is the revolutionary moment. This is the time that I wanted to seize it. I'm like, I've never been active before, so let's go the distance. And I think that's the great thing, is I'm hoping I'm speaking for more than just me, but that a lot of us who were not involved before Occupy, whether Boston, Houston, Oakland, or wherever, decided this is our chance. This is when we're going to go the distance. And maybe I can't tell you where Occupy is going to go from here. Perhaps this political sequence has ended and a new one is going to emerge. I'm still convinced that as long as this system exists, as long as capitalism exists, new forms of resistance are going to keep manifesting themselves. New people are going to fight in one fashion or another. And I do believe that with courage, with commitment, with collective struggle, that potentially we can actually win. And that's why I stay involved. And by winning, I do mean bringing the system down. I do mean bringing about socialism. And these are just some thoughts, and I hope that you find them enlightening in one fashion or another. So this is Enaa with you in the fight back. Thank you.